Welcome to the Pantheon Plus Rewind. Hello, everyone. It's good to be back with you after a week away for episode 118 of The Rewind. If you're new here, well, welcome. And if you're not, then welcome back. This is the weekly podcast that follows ever so closely the development of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, the in-the-works MMORPG by Visionary Realms. Today on the show, we're recapping the September developer livestream, digging through the backlog of community content, and embarking on some lore concerning the history of Terminus. It's almost autumn, and that means the leaves are thinking about falling, and it means MMOs are calling, and we rise to the occasion to bring you the latest from the Pantheon community's home cooking. So grab a plate and settle into the hearth as I, Theric, and my cozy co-host, Desrin, welcome you to this week's Rewind. Desrin, welcome back.
Hey,
it's good to hear your voice again. Good to talk to you. How was your trip?
Oh, it was horrendous. Thank you. I'm so glad to be back, honestly. 90% of the trip I would not like to redo, but luckily my last day and a half, 2 days was kind of made up for it. But I'm definitely glad to be back, and we have so much going on. I'm really excited.
Yeah, we have a lot going on, lots to talk about. I'm just going to do a quick little shout out to what my week has been like. I had to take a sick day this week because my kid is sick, but I didn't, not being sick myself was kind of nice because I just spent the whole day on the couch playing some Breath of the Wild.
Ooh.
And I love that game so much. It pulls me back in so hard. And this happened to be the same week that they announced the follow-up. I think Tears of the Kingdom is the name of it, if I remember correctly. The Nintendo Direct was this week, coming out in May of next year. And this is like the only game that my wife really enjoyed sort of backseat playing with me, like side on the couch. And we've booked a week off in May for that week to play it together, play the next one together. It's going to be so much fun. She's not a gamer. I've said that before, but I'm so looking forward to it because it's just a great experience. So
yeah, man,
definitely looking forward to that. So yeah, I mean, playing Breath of the Wild is a solo activity, but we are not a solo podcast. We have our adventure party here joining us as always. So this week it's Ziplocks on the Darkmer Rogue, Sparrow on the Elf Ranger, Bounty Coat on the Human Wizard, Screech on the Scarbard, Wiki Woo on the Human Enchanter, Shuriken on the Dwarf Cleric, Horsasaurus on the Human Warrior, Fury Wrath on the Archai Summoner, Pavejo on the Gnome Wizard, Asera Avienda on the Elf Druid, and Churro Dude on the Halfling Dire Lord. I also want to give a huge congratulations to the Rewind listener by the name of Lenny, who won the Scion of the Black Rose pledge that we gave away 2 weeks ago. So, I mean, it's always great to get these pledges done and to give it away to somebody, a new name that I haven't spoken to them before. This was a new listener to my knowledge, and the list of people who have won a pledge on our show keeps getting bigger and bigger. So that's harder and harder to do. And we had a huge turnout for that show, as you know, Des. And I remember when the show was going on, I'm like furiously writing down names and I'm triple checking to make sure I had all the right names entered for the draw. It was like super frantic, but for a good cause, obviously, and really enjoyed ourselves as we always do. So if you're listening to this, stay tuned in the future. We're going to do more giveaways because they're lots of work, but they're also the most fun thing we do.
Yeah.
Right. So if you want to support the show, you can do that in a couple ways. To help us keep doing these pledge giveaways, you can hit up the Patreon campaign. That's linked in the video description and in the show notes. You can also hit the super chat button during the premiere to drop a thanks there, or hit that super thanks if you're watching after the fact and leave a comment with what you like and what you don't and what you want to say. And this last one we gave away, like I said, it was a big pledge, big deal. But you guys are so supportive and we are so extremely grateful for it that we want to keep doing that kind of stuff. So, of course, the Rewind will always be a product. It's free. It's a product of our fan energy and of no paywalls or barriers or anything like that to enjoy it. So you're not obligated to do anything, but we're just here for you and we're here to have a good time. And hopefully we're here for a long time. So
yes.
Yeah, I like that. We've got the gratitude foundation laid down. Desrin, are you ready to get cooking here?
Oh, absolutely. Let's do it.
this week in Visionary Realms News and Notes. All right, let's dive in. We got the September 2022 development update from VR to talk about. This one was all about the new character models and class updates, as they said in their post. And these are two of our most beloved topics. I don't think I'm wrong in saying that. And on Pantheon Plus U, Minus and Ronick actually jumped on to talk with me and Drac and Nathan NAPALM for a little extra content for everyone. Mm-hmm. So we'll be covering that stuff as well. But let's start with the class updates, Des, and we got to go back to school with Taham to learn about some
nice.
some developments. Yeah, I got his name right this time. I'm very proud of myself. To learn, some developments with the Rogue and the Enchanter, and as we had hoped, the Cleric was in there. So yeah, that was the big part. We'll get to the Cleric at the end. The way they did it, save the best for last, right? Before we get to the details, though, I do really want to say I really like the way VR is going about this. The way that they sort of present the information with an overview of the goals of the class updates. So like they say, this is what we want to do with it, and here's the abilities that represent that demonstrate that. I think it's a good way of doing it. Now, we'd be here all day if we went through each and every class skill and ability they showed. So we're not going to do that, but we're going to summarize some of the key points and use a couple examples of those class abilities to sort of show, just talk about what they were trying to demonstrate and whether, share our thoughts on them. So, Desmond, as I go through this, jump in here with any additions that you have. But let's start with we are said about the Rogue. They said the Rogue experience hasn't really undergone any dramatic changes, but techniques are now being emphasized, and they want to, quote, capitalize on states. So if you're new to following Pantheon, what states are basically conditions that are imposed upon mobs. And it's not that uncommon. We see them in other MMOs, other RPGs, that kind of thing. A good example of this was the Rogue skill Smoke Trick being updated. And it's been updated to take advantage of the disoriented and stunned states. And that then allows it to synergize with other Rogue abilities, things like Flash Bomb, which that imposes the stunned state, as well as a new skill we saw called Skullcracker, which imposes the disoriented state. Now, I would label this skill, Smoke Trick, as being of extreme utility based on this change. And I think what we saw, you can say it's going to be having those three skills because of their synergy, probably a pretty solid trio on your limited action set bar. Again, as we go through all these, keep that in mind, like the limited action set, the choice you're making to put these abilities on your bar, does it make it? Does it not? You can sort of play that sort of little mind game with yourself. And I mentioned Skullcracker being a new rogue ability. It's actually a technique. It's a weapon technique for crushing weapons, for rogues that wield crushing weapons. We'll talk about in a second. It gets a bonus from strength and as well from intellect. Again, we're talking about a rogue here, right? So very interesting. We also saw this, this is another, this is one of those skills that gets a bonus from a ability score. There was another one that got a bonus from agility and dexterity. So, it sounds like VR's, again, leaning into these unorthodox combinations, because we don't really think of rogues utilizing crushing weapons or intellect. Same with the Dire Lord we saw last time. The intellect stat was very important with one of their abilities. So, I don't know if Minus has been like getting Taham, I said it wrong, Taham, a lot of coffee in the office or not, but he's certainly seeing some improvements to his class. So, Desiree, your thoughts here on the Rogue update, and what details do you want to talk about? Because I know you're doing a video about this too, but we'll talk about that in a bit. But what did you think?
Well, first off, like as you said, there's a lot playing on states that we're seeing now, and I think everyone should really have their eyes open to more info as we go forward on this, because I don't think there's going to be gimmicks, or at the very least they should be worth paying attention to. We'll get to it soon, but there's already set up for some really awesome coordination between classes as they help each other out with certain states at certain times. Actually, I'm going to spoil it a bit. So, now, so to be kind of broad, the Rogue definitely seems like they'll be able to really help set up the Enchanter for example, to help lock down mobs. And this is the kind of synergy I think we're starting to see all over the place. I also kind of feel the need to say, I do love that there are options for a rogue using blunt weapons.
Really?
Oh yeah. I can see it being a really distinct style of play. It's really cool. Like, when we think rogue, if your experience is like, oh, it's the dagger stabby, but I think rogue more like the broad sense of a roguish person. And so I imagine some kind of like, sleuthy rogue kind of just whacking a dude upside the head with a club or something to knock him out, right?
There you go.
Kind of coming up from the shadows and bonk. And it fits that ability perfectly. I mean, it even gets a bonus, right? Or no, it only stuns if it's from behind. I think it really fits the theme. So I'm pretty stoked.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was kind of curious when we talked to Minus on Pantheon Plus U whether or not, how he felt about this. He confirmed he's not opposed to using a crushing, a blunt weapon, crushing, whatever they want to call it. He's not afraid to give up his daggers. That's what he said, at least. I pushed him on it a little bit. I kind of questioned him, like, I don't know, man. You seem like you really like daggers.
We'll see in the gameplay streams to come.
Yeah. Next time we see a gameplay stream, make sure if you're listening to this and you're in like VR's chat to call him out or make sure he's held accountable for that statement. I like what you said about the crossplay between the classes too. And it sort of transitions well into what I want to say about what we saw about the Enchanter, because the Enchanter skills, there was definitely some cross-class synergy with the Cleric. Yeah, in terms of like making sure the clerics can get their heals off. This isn't in the notes. I'm just sort of going like off what I remembered from last night. But and when I'm going to do a video about the Enchanter update, that I'm going to talk about that a little more, where being able to prevent your cleric from being interrupted is massive.
Huge.
It's huge, right? Because that's the death to all heals, is when they get interrupted and they can't get the heal off. Anyway.
Oh, actually, because you mentioned that, it is worth noting, this was kind of just slipped in there, but one part of the recent, combat updates that they've been doing to get, to push forward is having interrupts for players based on damage. So if you've ever noticed in the streams in the past, you don't really get interrupted as you cast, and now you do. It's a standard thing, right? But worth noting that that's a thing now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a good point. And then so looking at the Enchanter, what they showed us, they said again, it's not a class that's undergone substantial changes, which is a good thing, because that means they're pretty happy with where it's
you
at.
already really liked it.
I did. Admittedly, I don't want to see a lot of changes to the Enchanter because I really like the class. Anyway, but there's few refinements that they've made, and they're significant if you ask me. And I'll give you the first and foremost one in my mind. No more infinite mezzing.
Thank every god and deity of Terminus.
Yeah, let's go through the Book of the Avaloth and say a prayer to each one of those deities, because
it was kind of silly.
It was literally like pretty easy to keep the battlefield under control, a big battlefield. And what they've done here is really intriguing. Basically, it's been updated for balance purposes. The cast time was increased. So here's what they did. They increased the cast time. So to not allow it to be used as an interrupt, because again,
that's exactly what it was used for.
Yep, it was absolutely used for. So it's got a longer cast time. But here's the more important part. They had what's called a perpetuation cost, or what they called it on the stream anyway, probably not formally called that. Basically, mana is expended over time per mez target. So I'm not going to lie, this weakens the Enchanter's class, but as an overall balancing thing, and I think as a challenge in the way the class plays, is amazing. They found a way to put the Enchanter into a tension building situation instead of just playing the mez timer rotation, which basically was what you were doing. You were just keeping those clocks ticking over and over. And if you had it at a certain point, your mana was not really an issue. So now decisions got to be made. Do I keep the one target mez for a really long time? Is that the most important thing? Or is it more important that I keep many for a short period of time? And I think that was really the theme with this Enchanter update, the addition of tension, like the new skill. And Ronak talked about this, Discordant Divination. It's basically a basic direct damage spell, but the type of damage it does is random. Now, that could be great in one situation. It could be a problem in another. Ronik was very excited about this when we talked to him on Pantheon Plus U. He talked about how this idea, really spoke to him, this randomness idea in this way, because randomness is always sort of a catch-22 sometimes, or hit and miss. And how it felt to try it out was something that he really liked. And there's another example of this. Again, another skill for the enchanter, new skill called Brain Freeze. You basically, if you want to conceptualize it, it's an interrupt over time. So
I like that.
you put it on the mob and it randomly interrupts the NPC multiple times, but you don't control that cadence. You don't control when those interrupts happen. Ridiculously cool idea, if you ask me. Will you see it? Will you use it? How much RNG can you kind of stomach for the sake of value, for the sake of sort of a fire and forget interrupt over time?
And that like one time when no one has an interrupt available and it happens to tick, like when the enemy is casting something huge, it's going to be like,
you're the hero, man. At that point, you're the hero. And then you take responsibility for it.
Oh, I totally intended that.
I had that under control. And then when it fails, you say, well, what can I do? It's random.
It's random.
So if you're playing an enchanter, Des, are you putting this on your limited action set?
Oh, dude. Of course, this depends on what else is available, right? But I think this is, your overall, I think as they put it, it helps out the healers even if you're not interrupting something, just because it's a brief little stun. So just a little bit of breathing room to help out the rest of the team. I think it's a good just kind of fire and forget. If you're dealing with stuff that, that's going to actually be effective against. I wouldn't, I definitely wouldn't use the, discordant divination in Halnir Cave against those imps. Because
that's my brain went right there too, right? That's the best example we've seen of that.
Yeah, anyone that's had experience, and we refer to the stream, of course, because this has been seen publicly, but it leaves an impression. We'll give it that.
I think Co felt the impression of that when he played.
Absolutely. Sure. But yeah, like, something where the damage type matters less. I think that's great because it sounds like it's going to be higher damage. It's just random damage. I love that. Actually, I like this new theme with the enchanter. I know they said it would major differences, but there's this kind of pervasive theme that's coming up here, and it's uncertainty. Like it's control, but not surety. I think that's going to make enchanters feel pretty spicy to play, depending on how much you lean into that. Because not all abilities are that way, but I could see a build guide right now. The lottery enchanter,
controlled chaos. How about that? Let's call it controlled chaos.
Yeah, and I really like how you said tension building, especially for Mez. I think this is just where a lot of folks. They complain about combat being slow, but they're going to be really surprised by situations that still feel really hectic in spite of a lower actions per minute. And this, it's actually a really simple solution to the Mez problem, right? But it's elegant. I think it works just right. And the more that goes down, the more you're going to feel that pressure of what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I love it.
Yeah. I know, I love it too. And the thing is that I want to feel that pressure, even though playing an enchanter, I don't know what kind of mindset it attracts. I mean, I know I'm attracted to playing it, so I can speak for myself, but I like that feeling of, being a little bit of a puppet master with regard to the battlefield and my allies relying on my maintaining control of these things and throwing some tension and throwing some chance that it might fail feels good. It feels like I'm challenged, like I'm being challenged.
As if playing a CC class wasn't stressful enough already, right?
Yeah, that's right. Hey, let's go. I'm up for it. Challenge is what I'm here for. And we're also here for what we were here for in the class update was the clerics for sure. We got what we got didn't disappoint. VR showed the skills that promote the cleric as basically a frontline healer with mitigation-based healing, some summoned items, and an anti-undead arsenal. Now, the centerpiece skill here, I'd say, was called Celestial Guard. And this restores health and places an absorption shield on the target. The key is that the shield strength is based on the healing that's done. So the more healing it provides, the better the shield. And if the target's below 20% health, it gets really crazy good. So almost too good, if you ask me. I don't know. But again, this is the first time we're seeing the class. So again, like the refinements made to the Enchanter and the Rogue, this will probably be the first iteration, and then they'll do some refinements later on.
I have to point something out, though, and this is totally like off script and off of what was said in the stream, but just the fact that it's based on healing done. If you let your mind wander a little bit, and as we're starting to see with classes that can actually help, particular parts of healing, maybe even that expands to temporary things. So I could imagine, if there's another class that can increase the next heal by, a certain amount, the cleric is going to want to recognize when that happens and use this ability in kind, because it's going to double its effectiveness, because it's based on the healing done. And there's so much synergy possibility there. Plus, the whole 20% thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, that's finding those overlaps, those interactions, and when you can exponentially increase a spell's efficiency or its effect, you start stacking numbers on numbers on numbers. It could get pretty crazy, right? So, this is the kind of stuff that people look for in games, and this is the kind of stuff people love to find. So it challenges the cleric, I think, here. And one of the things that came up on the show afterwards, we talked a lot about, was how this encourages a really actively engaged player, a cleric in this case. But one of the things that this spell in particular, if you look at it, it really asks the cleric to wait until the last possible moment to apply it. And we joked on the show that it's like playing chicken with your tanks, right? Yeah. How low can you go? We talked about tension building already, and this definitely keeps the player in the moment. And no more lazy healing if you want to stay in your group's good graces, or if you just want to be like, we talk about reputation, we talk about getting known for something, and you want to be known as a good cleric, use this spell properly. I think you've got a real opportunity to really build your reputation, your profile as a cleric, if with skills like this. Now, with the rogue, I mentioned weapon techniques. So they gave one to the clerics too, and it's called Faithful Strike. It's a general technique, which again means it's like weapon agnostic. It means all clerics will get it. It doesn't depend on the weapon you're using. But what it is giving clerics basically a life drain effect. It does divine damage. The cool thing here is that they linked it to a spell called Bonds of Faith. And what that does is it causes certain ally abilities to restore health. So basically, at the end of the day, you can give an ally Faithful Strike, a general technique, and there's a great ability interplay here. And ultimately, Bonds of Faith, because it said it can only be applied to certain abilities. Its value, I think, is going to be dependent on which abilities it can be applied to. However, Faithful Strike on its own is just plain good, right? Life drains, life taps, always something you want. And it was funny, I was looking through the comments on VR's official on the YouTube channel for the video, and our friend Lenny, who won the pledge, actually had a comment that I wanted to post in here because I think we can answer it. And the question Lenny had was, has this cleric version ever been in the pre-alpha game footage? He's thinking the EQ cast healer cleric version was the only one being played to this point, and you would be right. Yep. They've never showed this version of the cleric, Lenny. So there's been older streams where they've had we say we've never seen the ranger, but that one of the very first streams back in 2016, I think it was, Basgrim's playing a ranger, but it's just a class with some basic abilities and called a ranger. And I think the cleric was the same sort of thing at the time. Or I'm thinking there's an Amber Fate stream where Brass was playing a cleric, but again, just a basic kit, nothing like this. Yeah. So to answer your question. So Desmond, do you like what you saw from the cleric here and the skills that were described and how they sort of showed off this new class?
Oh, absolutely. I think we were all really curious how this whole mitigation-based, frontline healer role would pan out. And even these just 5 abilities, I think, paint a great picture. I'm incredibly excited about anything that lets a healer convert damage to healing, right? And I think it's going to make for some pretty big differences between grouping with a cleric or another healer, or even another cleric, I should say. With all these class updates that we've seen, I think it's pretty safe to say that there's going to be a lot of variances within a class, maybe more than we've seen before in this kind of MMORPG.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked about that with the rogue a little bit, right? Like variations on builds is so important, and so allowing you to play a character that is different from every other character is so important.
Yeah, and I think it's going to make grouping like really interesting, and one of my favorite things about all of this is all of this interplay, all of the synergy, or class differences and stuff. It just continues to raise the skill ceiling, right? This kind of stuff is gonna. I mean, you could imagine just having an enchanter and a rogue, be on the same page, is going to make a noticeable difference in your group,
because they're both doing some crowd control, perhaps, right? So they're both using their abilities. Maybe one, even though the rogue's primary purpose isn't crowd control, maybe the enchanter has a tool they really want to use. They offload some of their crowd control duties to the rogue just so they can focus on another area.
Or just getting in a group and an enchanter like asking, hey, like, would you mind putting Skullcracker on your bar, or Smoke Trick or whatever, because if you land this, when a mob gets out of control or we get an ad, it guarantees that my mez lands. How huge is that? That kind of conversation and setup, I think, is going to be a really interesting aspect of Pantheon when it comes to playing with other people. And I would like throw in a few takeaways just as far as the class stuff, though, that were overarching themes. One, the abilities are getting a lot more interesting and complex. I used to complain, like, the abilities used to be kind of like basic EQ, simple, but with some flavor text, that was a big gripe of mine. And but now, as far as we've seen in these updates, they're actually really engaging. They're unique even, and I also noticed they're putting a lot into techniques, which is kind of a side thing, but I think we'll see a lot more on techniques as we go. But just what they're showing, especially when it comes to the rogue, and I think it adds a good amount of dynamism to how you play your class, quite a bit. That, and like I mentioned, states, I can't stress that enough. Adding that extra layer of cooperation and comboing, it's gonna really separate like a tight knit, skilled group from, a kind of more careless kind of group, right? Like it's making that distinction very clear. I think you're really going to notice hopping into a group with either people or people that just get it. It's going to be very exciting. But yeah, I'm really liking what we're seeing on these class updates. This has been super fun, and I'm cracking up that he left out the monk. Just way to hear the community.
Yeah, they did. They made that joke right off the hop. That was pretty funny, actually. Sorry, monks, not today. So let's move on to the other big part of the dev stream, and that was we got to meet a couple new VR team members, which is awesome. We met Tara Kamara Solberg. She is the 3D character and creature artist, and we met Duarte, also known as Chroma. They are the new character and creature animator. Boy, I can't say that. And we got a really solid interview from Minus, where they talked about their work, specifically with regard to the redo of the human models. Now, I'm going to admit this. When they first announced the stream and they said, new character models, I was guessing, I was hoping, longing, if you will, for some of the models we haven't seen since forever ago, like the Dark Mirror, like your Archai and the Scar.
You were waiting for the Scar?
We didn't get that. As long as they're not Rangers, yeah. I want to see the Scar.
Sorry.
Yeah, man, I'll take it. Well, we didn't get that. So a little bit of a disappointment there, but there was an acknowledgement. I thought that they are on the way, and the fact that they also gave us a bit of a timeline on it was reassuring. Yeah. So Tara said that they started on working on the redo of the humans in May of this year, but they were also working on the armor pipeline and the associated systems. So it wasn't fully exclusively focused on the humans. So the time was a little longer to get them done. And then they said optimistically, each character model should take 2 to 3 weeks. So if they're forecasting, they're going to be done. They hope to be halfway done them by the end of this year, 2022, and then complete them by the end of spring of 2023. So that's some news we can use for sure, and that's something we can sort of keep an eye on in terms of where they're at with this. Tara also noted that the humans are in the final stages, and the new armor pipeline has now been established and completed. So very good to hear that. The next races in order that Tara anticipates them working on are the Darkmer, Archai, Scar, Ogre, Elf, Dwarf, Halfling, and Gnome. So who knows if that order will be maintained, but that's what that is what they said. So we didn't get the show and tell with regard to those other races, but what we did get was a really in-depth look at the human models and how they were redone and why they needed to be redone. And I think that was a really important explanation because it was interesting to see how they've actually accomplished the task. So the takeaway here, I think, that it wasn't just an aesthetic thing. So if people are out there thinking, and I would be frustrated too, oh, they just didn't like the look of it, they wanted to change the looks. No, that's not what it was. There was more going on here because I actually liked how the old models looked. Huh. I mean, before the stream, maybe I liked them more than I did after the stream because they showed some funky stuff that I wasn't aware of. But basically, the thing is, Tara said that there was an armor fitting problem. They both said this. Tara said they needed to make all the armor types fit all the body types. And this was an opportunity to solve that problem and improve the look. And they say improve the look, they specified getting it closer to what the concept art sort of looks like. I think that's important. It's funny, I've got in my notes, Tara talked about reducing the tires. Let's just say the tries, not tires there. What are you talking about? I don't even know I can't even write it because I don't know what it is. But Desrin, you're an expert on this. You came on Pantheon Plus U and basically said it's, polygon related. You can
think of it like that.
Yeah, reducing the polygons that you need to do this, to put them in a place where it's more manageable. Duarte said the old character rigs also had a problem with smoothing animations. Yeah. And I found that really interesting was what he said about Pantheon being because it's a group play game, it's a group-centric game. That means there's a lot of data being transmitted in terms of animation at all times, more so than you would in like a non-group focused MMO. So their models needed less bones to be more performant. And the old rig had about 150 bones that many of them weren't even being used. And what Duarte has done is taken the new rig, he's reduced the bones by about 30% to about 105. He said the lack of control of bones was also an issue. And this now gives them control of every bone that they're using to create these animations and these riggings. He created a more standardized rig for all the races so they can share animations between the races. So lots of tech talk here, but I feel like it makes sense. Even this presentation made sense even to a layperson like me. What we saw in terms of demonstrations looked pretty sweet. And then, whether it was the emote style movements, everybody loved that axe shot.
Oh yeah,
the guy putting the axe. It didn't hit me the same way, but I love that everybody loved it, so it's fine. But the armor being fully applied at the end on those models looked amazing. So lots of good on both sides, the animation and the rigging and the models. Desrin, what struck you, I should say, with from the interview and from what we saw?
Oh my goodness. So I loved this interview, as you would probably expect, I guess. You did mention they kind of, I would say kind of slid in there that, they had some troubles with animation smoothing with the old rig. And that was just music to my ears, I'll admit, because one of my kind of things is that I don't think the animations were particularly bad, but there's a lot of smoothing that goes along with modern animations that makes things feel more natural and connected that I think was missing with Pantheon. And I've just noticed it for a long time. And hearing that that might improve because of these changes totally makes me happy. But the other thing, I'm glad you kind of brought this up because, I was bound to, let's be honest, that the whole like redoing, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure this is going to, bristle some spines or feathers or whatever you want to say. It's definitely a bit of a gut punch to hear that, like, the way it wasn't optimal. I get that. And I wouldn't say I'm going to give VR a full pass here because, they've been through several, years of animation and a few points where they're talking about, hey, we improved this system in this way. And I do have to point out, though, that, and I'm sure this is just going to annoy people, but these projects change. They evolve, especially as new staff arrives. So, you might think like, why didn't Ross, the old lead animator, or old, he's still there. He's still the lead animator. But like, why didn't Ross just do it right the first time? And it's just because there isn't really a right. In the end, it had to get done. And they did what they had with what they had. And anyway, I'm saying that we're getting out of this is like a much better product. So at the end, we get a better finished product that, like the refactor and all these other system updates will mean that the game is more sustainable, even with just a small team as they are. So I'm super excited to see what how these changes play out and what it means for the future of the game, because the more efficient they can make it, even if it seems like they're redoing stuff, it's better for the, longevity of the game. If it's easier to make an animation, if it's easier to make an armor, if it's easier to fit an armor, it means we get more. So
yeah, well, and the thing is like, the animation smoothing is one thing, but like what Tara was saying, like they had a problem with the armor fitting.
Yes.
Like it wasn't working. Like, you can't just sort of like, we'll fix it later. That's what gets everybody in trouble, no matter what you're doing, whether it's this project or something, another project on your own life. If you ignore a problem for too long, it becomes insurmountable, and you got to deal with it.
But that's the thing. It's like, well, I understand that it sounds ridiculous to, for an MMO, fit a mesh to each body type, manually, and it's a lot of work. But if you don't have time to, try to make a better way, it's a way to get some armor out, like to get it done. And I can't help but defend that a little bit, just because, this is just stuff you don't see. You don't see this often. And, but I do get the kind of frustration. However, knowing that we should have a suite of, races sometime mid next year that look great. Because, look, the updates themselves, man, I can't stress how much I'm just falling in love with the new models and rig. Like, I know you have your reservations. And you mentioned that the emote, right? I love it not because it's like a perfect animation. I think it was just a demo, honestly. I don't even know if that animation is going to make it into the game.
Oh, the way Minus talked about it, I have a feeling it's getting in the game.
Maybe. I'm sure it'll get cleaned up a bit. But what I like about it is, more than anything, it has some real character. Pun intended. Like, that animation kind of told me that this is handmade. Like, there's something about this that you just don't get from mocap, and that, I think, is gonna really fit a lot of people's how they want the game to feel, and be different than what else is on the market. And lastly, you mentioned everything kind of coming together at the end with showing the armors and everything, and that was a huge treat. There's another thing that I'll mention later, I think, that I'm pretty excited about, but I've been rambling on enough, so
Yeah, no, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of good points there, and just a lot of excitement about that. And you could hear that in their voices when they talked about their jobs, and how much they enjoyed what they're doing. So it seems like they're really in sync, really working in tandem with each other. So that was another aspect, another thing I wanted to mention. But another aspect I wanted to bring up as well was how Tara noted the old models didn't leave room for any customization outside of like head swapping. And I'm talking customization from a player perspective. So with these new rigging systems, they said they allow for much more targeted player customization, character customization. What's kind of crazy is that even like the only thing you could do before was swap your head and your hairstyle, which, I know it's an indie game. I know it's a small company. We say it all the time. I don't think that cuts it. I don't think that does justice. I don't think the game is serviced by that at all. And I think that it would get roundly criticized. Now, we can sort of, there are some things we do say it a lot. They're an indie company, they're limited. But this is going to go a long way for them, I think, because even though they're not going, it's not going to the nth degree like some of the high, the Eastern MMOs.
I actually prefer that, right?
Like what, more simple?
More simple, more yeah. Simple but meaningful changes.
Well, it's funny because on Pantheon Plus You, Nathan and I kind of disagreed on this. He's like, I would have been fine just swapping heads. I'm like, no, can't have just, like that's gonna bug me, But anyway. So Duarte talked about, many facial features can be changed. For example, they both talked about how the old models had some really unrealistic proportions. And I never noticed that before, but I got to tell you, in this stream, that ginormous alien head became something I can't unsee. It was ridiculous. What was going on there? How did they put hair on that thing? Because it was
you had to put hair on that thing.
Yeah, if you had chosen like a bald hairstyle, if you had no hairstyle, I guess, you would have been ridiculed in that for sure. It looked ridiculous. Now, I have some nitpicks. You referenced them a second ago, and I liked how the old models seemed a little bit more weathered, you might say. I think these new models definitely have a younger tenor to their look, almost. And I don't want to say this because it sounds terrible. It sounds like a slam, like I don't know. Too much critical, but almost generic. I think that, and this is exactly counterpoint to what you were saying. You felt like they gave them more a defined look. I think there was almost more of a generic look to them. Now, if it works better, that's really the main thing. Honestly, performance functionality has to come first, for sure. But the old models were I guess I was attached to them, But again, I'm also being mindful of the fact that it's a symptom of following a game that's in development.
Yeah.
You cannot get attached to how something looks, right?
Yeah.
We've all got our gray box memories with in some back corner of our minds, whether we like it or not, it lives in our minds. But those days are gone, and we are in the HDRP world now. And as with models, character models, these ones that we're seeing now, there'll be refinements to those as well. So don't get too hooked into them. But I'm sure more than what you've said already, Desmond, you have more thoughts on the animations and the models here, right?
Of course. I mean, I like I said, I'm a huge fan of the updated models and the few animations we saw. I'm on the opposite, man. I think they look more like, I don't know, grounded, or like they're more realistic, I would say, but not in like we're just going for photorealism like every other game on the market. But like it actually felt more Pantheon to me. Like the old models, when they did the side by side, I feel those look more generic RPG. They definitely look more like plasticky, or I don't know. I would almost say goofy.
Well, that's exactly the opposite of what I feel. I feel like the new ones looked goofy and the old ones looked much more serious. And my sort of theme Pantheon mindset, it's a more of a serious tone. It's not like blood and guts, Conan, Mortal Kombat kind of thing, but it's got and this feels a little bit on the lighter side. These models look a little lighter to me.
Well, so on the Plus U, like I mentioned that word heroic. And I think I stand by that. We'll just have to see how the other races come, right? But I think the humans look way better and somehow more in line with what I'd expect to see in Pantheon. yeah, it's funny that like being a thing of art, right? It's so easy for us to have these totally different.
Yeah. Aesthetic choices are always going to be there's no right answer, right? There's no right answer. It's an aesthetic choice.
And I do look forward to seeing them running around in game. That might make a difference as well. But I have to throw this in. I have to throw this in here because this is such a wholesome thing. And we shouldn't get back on the topic again.
No, but this is worth mentioning. I know. Okay, this is definitely worth mentioning.
And this is Ronick came on Plus U last night with Minus, but there was a lot of talk about the female models, and Ronick brought up something that Brad had said a long time ago, which was basically that he wanted characters in Pantheon that his daughter would be proud to play. And I'm super glad he came on and brought that up. And I wouldn't say I got choked up or anything, but just like that was just so wholesome, man. No. That was just such a
it felt great. I mean, it was because we were struggling to try and articulate how to say it properly. We wanted it. We were trying. I think we were all of the same mindset, but we just couldn't put it into words and to say it like that. And because it links back to, Brad, and it links back to his vision for the game. And it just, for anybody who has a daughter, I mean, I have 2 sons, right? I don't have a daughter. But if I had a daughter, I'd want that too. Yeah. I'd want my daughter to be proud to look at the female models in this game and say, yeah, that makes me feel good about myself. Yeah. Like that. I feel like that's a representation of me, so it was a really nice way to put a bow on it.
Totally. Well, on another note, since I know it's kind of hard to both listen to the dialogue and pay close attention to the video in these streams, which I'm more kind of just speaking on myself here. But so when they show that final T-pose model with the different armors, in case it wasn't clear, what they're demonstrating there is just how different the same mesh can look. They showed off, I don't know, at least 6 or 7, maybe more, different reskins of the same armor mesh. And you could see just like how much variety they can get out of that single mesh. I think this is going to be really great news for folks specifically that maybe read a bit about this and thought like we're going to be headed towards the, that dreaded same armor but green trope. We see that in MMOs all the time.
Yep, we do.
And I don't know how many people were like picking up on that, but if you go back and watch the stream, check out that whole last clip. It's the same mesh the whole time, but the armors look quite different. So very, very well done there, and great. I think that really bodes well for the future. Actually, I have to point this out too, because I don't think I've seen anyone talk about this, but how they've mentioned in the newsletters that they've been working on these new casting animations, right?
Yep.
They just threw those in. Like they didn't even say, oh, hey, in those new casting animations, these are the ones. They were just like kind of talking over it casually, but there's actually a huge nugget in here, is that it's not just new casting animations. It shows that casting animations are actually specific to the school of spell that you're casting in a very distinct way. Like you'll be able to tell if someone's casting an evocation spell or a what was one of the other ones? I already forgot.
I think there was one that said distortion.
Yeah, distortion. That was new.
Distortion, right? Yeah, that was new. I remember, like, what is that? Like that's a new thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot to go back and mine from this. Yeah, and you're right. It's completely untalked about. It's weird.
Yeah, I think that's one of those like little details, right? Where in a lot of these games you have the same casting animation, or just kind of a random same casting animation through all your spells, but this actually throws some identity in there. Like, your destruction or whatever it was called, like it looks forceful and anyway.
Let me just ask you, Desmond, any last comments from about the stream? Anything we didn't talk about? Anything else you wanted to mention?
Oh, I'll just be a little sappy. Shout out to Duarte and Tara. They were a real treat, and I know talked about this a few times, but like I really can't wait to get them back on the stream. Obviously they've got a ton of work to do, but they were really great. I can't wait to see the next set of race models, more armor and just all the stuff that they're working on. I think just in general, we're really getting to that point where Pantheon can show some actually pretty good looking stuff. I would say it's more likely to be similar to what we'll see at launch instead of the more early development stuff we're used to. Because I think a lot of what we even have today is more closer to development than it is to release. And so, showcasing some of that new talent, they're really going to push the game forward. And we're, finally starting to see stuff that is impressive that we're probably going to get. And it's all coming along. That's it.
Yeah. It's coming along. That's right. Yeah, it's all good. So that's the news for the week, for the last 2 weeks, I guess. Let's talk about our notes, and that's our calendar for Pantheon Plus this week. So this is Pantheon Plus content, plus our friends like CryptFox, who's streaming on Monday on his Twitch channel. He's playing some Temtem. So I don't know anything about Temtem.
Yes, but, I haven't played Temtem, but I think it's really cool that he's streaming that, because there was a kind of an explosion on that a long time ago, and I haven't really heard much since. But really cool idea, and I think really cool, enjoyable thing.
Nice. Is it an MMO? What is it? What is it
kind of. It's multi. You think of it like multiplayer Pokemon. Really really neat stuff though.
Yeah, so that's 7 p.m. Eastern on CryptFox's Twitch channel. Then, of course, Midnight Drac and the EQ crew are back for their late night Twitch After Dark series where they're playing EverQuest. On Tuesday, our friend Man of Rohan has a video coming out. All I know is it's called Shenanigans.
That's good enough for me.
Shenanigans is a great word. There's no real bad way of using that word in any context. So it's going to be worth watching. So make sure you're subscribed to Man of Rohan's YouTube channel. On Tuesday night, we are back for MMOs 101. We're all joining in. The whole crew of us is joining in to play some Fractured, which is a brand new MMO that just entered early access this week. I've got it downloaded and installed. I don't know about you, Des, but I haven't tried it out yet, but looking forward to having our swarm group, because it's unlimited group size in that game, apparently. So we're going to be playing that's Tuesday night on our Pantheon Plus Twitch channel, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern. Wednesday, our friend Wizen has some another entry on his journal, fan fiction coming up. That's on our website at pantheon.plus. So on Thursday, we've got two things. Well, first of all, we've got the 201. Now, because the 101 is going to be all of us and we're playing Fractured, I figured we'd do something a little different with the 201. So this is going to be, we're going to be playing some Guild Wars 2. And it's going to include our newest friends, Sarah and Essen, joining us to play that. And it's going to be me, Udez, Sarah, Essen, and Stands in the Fire. And I loaded up my Guild Wars 2. I had to update, but I went back in and realized how much I'd forgotten how to play that game.
Oh, I'm sure I'll be hit with that too. It's been so long.
It has. So Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, hit us up here on this channel right here on the Pantheon Plus YouTube channel. We're going to be live streaming some Guild Wars 2. Friday, Redbeard Flynn, new video called New Game, Who Dis? He's talking about New World and their upcoming, I think they have some new content coming out here soon. I think that's what this is going on, what this is about. So that'll be interesting to see. And then that's it for the week. We are, of course, back next week for another Rewind. I also want to mention, I referenced it earlier. So Desrin, you and me and Drac are all doing videos. You took the Rogue, I took the Enchanter, and Drac took the Cleric to break down the updates we saw from the VR Dev live stream. So, sort of similar to the ones we've done before, in the same style. Quick little updater videos to show you some specifics and some things we didn't get into here talking about today. So Desrin, are you you're looking forward to doing that and put that together?
Of course, man. Of course.
Yeah, nice. All right, well, let's leave it there for this week's VR News and Notes.
The Pantheon community is full of cool projects, new people, and things that are just worth sharing. What's this over here? Look at that. So let's see what we can find in this week's Community Spotlight. All right, we've got a little bit of catching up to do on the Community Spotlight, and I have to point out, before I forget, Wizen did also release earlier this week Weissen Thalesred Scrawlings 11 to Pantheon.plus. So We'll have that linked in the show notes. I had to scour and look back across the last 2 weeks just to make sure, I'm not missing anything. And right off the bat, I'm already forgetting something. But
yeah, well, you know what? You can only scour the internet so much before you actually technically use your mind. So if you missed something, I don't blame you.
Well, if I do miss something, as usual, guys, shout me out in the comments or on Discord. Discord's preferable. And let me know if there's something out there that I might miss, and I'll put it up in the community spotlight. But to get to the content, the first one's a really fun one. Orrinn is a person in the community that does Twitch streams, and apparently he's done watch parties in the past, but I didn't know. And,
no, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, so it was brought to my attention today that he actually did a watch party for the last dev stream, and I watched through a good chunk of it, and Orrinn's just such a positive and fun guy. I really love his attitude, and his community seems great. So that's actually a Twitch VOD right now. And I'll have that link down below if you want to kind of watch through the stream again with just a really cool dude.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've never watched any of this stuff before. I'll have to check it out.
It was really fun. Really fun. And then we've got some Nathan NAPALM back on the horse.
On the cringe pony horse.
On the cringe horse. It's funny about this because I hadn't seen one from Nathan in a while, and I had to send him a message and ask him hey, are you done making recap videos and stuff like that? And literally a minute later, he posts this video.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Nah, man, no." I just put one.
I was wondering that too. It's funny you asked him that, because I was thinking that exact question the other day. I'm like, boy, he's streaming every day because he's full time, and I'm like, where's the Pantheon content? Are you not doing it anymore? I was kind of wondering that myself.
Well, he totally is.
He can't stay away from it.
Oh, no way. And this will not disappoint. This is pure NAPALM.
I haven't watched it yet. I gotta get on that.
It's recapping the latest dev stream. He's got character model and class updates, all that stuff. So get hyped, watch Nathan's video. Now the next one is another TiersonBane one. Now this one's kind of interesting. So this one's titled "The Biggest Problem: Pantheon Rise of the Fallen Commentary," and I wasn't sure where this one was going to start, honestly. But so Tierson's tackling something that comes up a lot around Pantheon, and we follow and we hear this a lot, and it's just that the game looks bad. At least to a modern AAA, MMO audience, right? A lot of people see Pantheon, they're like, this game doesn't look very good. So he kind of digs into a little bit of why graphics and animation aren't such a big deal, but in a bit of a twist of fate, he also points out that VR doesn't really want to be like other games that do the polished graphics first to get a bunch of hype and money, and then have to do them again later. Given we've seen, Pantheon has had to do some redos, of course, but their approach has just been a little opposite. And he even compares this to, Pantheon to Ashes of Creation, saying that on one hand, Pantheon kind of faces, money issues, more or less. They don't have a ton of funding, but Ashes of Creation potentially faces some gameplay issues instead. And I thought that was just a really interesting, I'm sure there's more nuance to it than that, right?
It was an interesting, the way he framed it was very interesting, because it's which problem would you rather have?
Yeah.
Fundamental gameplay issues or less funding than you'd like, right? Because Ashes doesn't have the funding problem there.
Yeah.
They just don't deal with that like Pantheon does.
Yeah, they probably tenfold the amount of money, right? So
at least.
It's one of those things we can't help but compare very different games, but it's always interesting because Tierson covers a lot of Ashes of Creation. But one thing he did say though that it hurt my soul a little bit was as an example, he kind of was just like, oh well, with Pantheon we could just play Pantheon now. It's called Project 99. It just looks old, and it's
not exactly the same, but
yeah, I'm like, I've got to speak out against this. I'm sorry, Tierson. I know it was just kind of like a joker example, but no. No, sorry.
No.
Anyway, let's get to some Sir Medieval stuff, because man, this guy's been cranking it out.
Yes.
So the first one is, I'll just shorten this to, what's on the menu for September 2022. And this is just a quick summary video of the monthly content schedule. Of course, given his expectations or hopes and stuff like that as well. It's always kind of interesting to hear what certain people are interested in for content. Like, hey, he might be super into what it seems like is the Parting the Veil. Because mounts are such a big topic in MMOs, and especially because he covered a ton of New World. That's a big debated thing, so I could see why he's very interested in that. It's a really good point. Anyway, that's always fun to watch. Next one, this is another like new, just random surprise. He did another video on one of the hot topic discussion, or two of the hot topic discussions, actually. Dialogue or dialogue choice importance. And it's just his thoughts on some of Kilson's promoted forum threads. And he does bring up a little bit of like what other people have said, in response, but it's not necessarily Pantheon info, like solid Pantheon info. It's mostly just kind of his ideas on what he would want. But he does dig into the question that was prompted on the official account.
I find a lot of his videos that his ideas they come through quite clearly, going back to the one you mentioned before about what was coming up. He was talking about in the dev stream, looking forward to the potential for a Bard and Necromancer class reveal. And I'm like,
yeah, we're like, nah, man,
that's not happening. That's definitely not happening. But again, it's a product of maybe, following more recently and, also being just more in tune with like what your ideas are, what your perspective on it is, rather than like, just being right on the nose with what to expect, because that's clearly wasn't going to happen. Right. But that's what he wanted. So that's cool.
Let's get into our last bit of community content here, and it's another Sir Medieval video. And this one, so he's kind of teased that he's got this upcoming lore series that he's got people animating for, some voice acting, all this crazy stuff. And this trailer, it was a trailer. I mean, it was
crazy,
very epic. Honestly, it looks like he's putting a ton of effort into this. So I can't help but be like, all right, that's cool. That he's obviously jumping all in on, lore. Specifically, and I mean the trailer music, the journey.
Okay, so let's talk about the Journey song.
Okay,
I did not expect that. That was way out of left field for me, because we talked earlier. I mentioned how Pantheon feels to me. If you asked me if a Journey song fits how Pantheon feels, I'd be like, no, that doesn't how I see it. Having said that, I support anybody's interpretation of how the game hits them. Like, if this is what makes him feel Pantheon, that cool, man, good for you. Like it was completely like a shock to this. I'm like diving into a pool of cold water. I'm like, whoa, what is this song?
It was really something that struck me hard as like, wow, I would never have expected this out of a Pantheon video. In the sense of like, wait, are we hitting mainstream? Because I feel like that's more like the mainstream MMO market, right? Is, excitement and all this like crazy, oh my gosh. And what's even better though, is that he's channeling that into a lore video. So I don't know how to feel about it.
I don't know that's a great way of saying it. I don't know how to feel about it either. It's like I said earlier, aesthetic choices, there's no right or wrong. Everybody, I'm like, he did a great job with this, tons of effort. Is it my taste? No. But that's why we all have the ability to create things. If you don't like it, create one that you do like, so
I can appreciate that he's bringing something to the table that we, no one else in our community really is exactly right now. Even with lore stuff, like your lore stuff is different than Chris Kane's stuff, and I'm sure his will be different than those prior to. But I am very much looking forward to his interpretation of the lore. We'll see if it turns out like the trailer, or if maybe it's its own kind of spin. But I mean, you can't deny 15,000 views for a lore announcement trailer. It's definitely resonating with someone.
That's exactly. And I looked at the comments because I'm like, how did other people think about this? And people loved it, man.
Yeah.
I mean, people were jonesing for this thing.
Like I said, he was the lore guy for New World. And I mean, if he can do stuff with New World lore, I mean, who knows what he's going to do? Who knows what's going to come out of this? Anyway, that's something to look forward to whenever that comes out. I didn't see a date or anything, but anyway, tons of fun stuff to catch up on. If I missed anything, let me know on Discord. And that is going to be it for this week's Community Spotlight.
Sit back and relax. It's time for The Lore You Know. All right, so our last lore offering was a short one, so we feel the need to make amends for that. So what we're doing is we're starting the tale of the seed and the worm, and that's worm with a Y for clarity for you listening. So this lore is quite old. It was released in December of 2018, part of the newsletter from that month. It's no longer available through the official website, but it contains so much important information when it comes to the history of Terminus as a planet and the ancient entities that once inhabited it. We talked about the Twin-Head God a little while ago. This is sort of in the same vein. So the focus of this tale actually is on the Spriggan, and through them, the mystical connections that exist in the world. So listen along closely if you consider yourself any kind of a scholar of our future MMO home, as I read the words of J.N. Gerhardt, Pantheon's lead writer, in this week's Lore You Know.
There are countless myths about the origin of Terminus. Orcs claim the planet was once a ring of titanic mountains strung together by bridges of water, ice, and magma. Ancient deities fought from each mountain, pushing them together into one mass that has been made smooth by the waters of time. Hieroglyphs of the Gaigana suggest there was one progenitor for all magic, language, and life, who knit the planet together from the fabrics of other worlds. The Tholen recount a lineage of dragon masters that stretches back all the way to the dawn of the planet. They name 4 flying beasts that each heralded a new season on their wings, yielding autumn, winter, spring, and summer in the wake of their flight across the planet. When compared to the scale of these tales, the story of the seed and the worm may be a book left on the shelf. Its narrative is not so loud or terrific, not at least upon glance at the cover, and is recounted only by the tree folk known as Spriggan. While there is evidence in support of the other legends, the seed and the worm lingers on with a peculiar credibility and enduring interest. It is a story with ancient roots that bears fruit to this very day, shortening the travel back into time like a new bloom on the tip of an old tree's branch. Now, to the telling. In the days before time, hands reached through the darkness and birthed a new light. This light was called the Seed of Life, and the hands buried the seed in a sphere of soil that hung amongst the heavens. A womb of ore, mineral, and dust, it was by any other name a planet, one the Spriggan would call Noah, but is more commonly referred to as Terminus. No other race is known to use the namesake Noah, and it does not appear to have been altered through the ages, as with Avazul or Nistarok. Out from the Seed of Life grew limbs of gigantic roots, which coursed through the layers of the planet and burst through on the surface, spreading creation throughout the world. From the roots of the seed came all of nature, seas teeming with life and rivers in kind, mountains and glaciers given their place and form, orders of beasts and plants birthed and set free to roam, and finally the first tree folk, a lineage of immense creatures meant to guide the flood of creation that whelmed over the planet. These were trusted to sculpt life within the palm of their very own hands. These creatures were known as the Enteniri, though adventurers today know them commonly as Ent. There are well-known legends of their heart-stopping height, with some reaching as tall as a small mountain and towering above every tree on the globe. Few of these titans still remain on Terminus, with the youngest generations counted among the oldest living creatures on the planet. They are largely passive in nature, save for the outlier, and live as stewards of the most ancient and deep forests, those nurtured on the arcane as much as Syros, the sun. Legend claims that the roots of an Ent may be able to reach through the crust of the earth and grasp a tendril of the mothering root that created them, though the connection may never grow so strong as to invite the attention of the enemy of the seed. Beneath the layers there churned a foe of the Seed of Life, known as the Great Worm of the Abyss. This monster may perhaps be a draconic kin to the dragons of sea and air, and its devious offspring are sometimes referred to as dragons of the earth, or basilisks. These creatures are often limbless, flightless, and in a great fury which may stem from their lot as the bastard branch of dragonkind. While their origins are not clear, apart from their patriarch worm, their lineage carries a consistent theme of rage against the rival Orrinn and Sol Cromane, if not always a capability to match their power. For basilisks, the crust of the earth is their sky, the hollows of caves their sea. Therefore, excursions onto the face of the planet are rare. Below the surface is their dwelling place, a realm that holds few challengers and even fewer threats. However, the longer basilisks remain in the depths of darkness, the more blind they become, losing the ability to discern light with their own eyes. It should be noted that this exchange does not limit the threat they pose if one is encountered at the bottom of some abyssal well. Hungry for the power the seed of life bestowed upon the world, the great worm hunted out the roots that crossed the pockets of darkness that existed between the layers of the rock, soil, and ore. Greedily, he ate the defenseless limbs of the seed, growing in size and strength as a result. Yet, of such magnitude were the roots that even the mammoth worm required years to sever and consume them. He gave no pause for centuries, and as life spread across the surface of Noah, hundreds of root limbs were being severed beneath it. In time, only dozens remained connected to the surface, then fewer than 10, then only 1. At the forest of this final great root, the seed of life birthed a new kind of creature. These were smaller and more numerous than the Antineri, but far more nimble and full of youth. If the Antineri were the ancient eyes overseeing creation, these younger kin would be the hands and feet that dwelt among it. Their contribution would be in training the tender stalk to break through the dry ground, not unlike the matriarch seed herself had done ages ago. These new offspring of the seed of life were known as her Spriggan, and it is said they bore the markings of the seed of life, who they call the face in the deep. To them, she gave the verdant shards, sacred crystals that hold a portion of the seed's power. Yet, no more had the face in the deep instructed the Spriggan on what the verdant shards were than the great worm devoured the final root, and her presence vanished from their sight.
And that is the lore, you know. Okay, well, Desrin, I didn't write an outro script, so we're going off the cuff here. So
I mean, I could just dote on the amazing lore there, because this is one of my favorites. Just because to me, this whole tale like strikes true to any real world myths that we hear from other cultures, and it's so tangible to me. As being something that's part of a culture. Like you could take this from any, you could take this from Norway or from India or from Africa. Any of this could line up with a creation story. And totally, I love it. So there you go. That's my part of the outro.
Absolutely. Oh, I like that, man. That's great. That's a great bring up. It's one of those stories that I feel like, I wish they'd put it back on the official website, but since they haven't, here it is. we'll bring it to you that way.
We'll bring it to you.
We'll bring it to you. Yeah. So anyway, it's good to be back with you, Des, after a week off. And I want to say thank you to everybody out there listening to us today. Just a reminder, make sure that if you're following us on YouTube, you subscribed, you like the video, you subscribe and turn on notifications. If you want to follow our Twitch channel, you can go there and do that as well to make sure you're not missing any content that's coming out from us over the next week or going forward. Again, keep an eye out for those class videos. Keep an eye out for our upcoming streams on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and of course, Monday night, midnight stream. And with that, Desrin, thanks, my friend. Good to talk to you as always. And we will talk again next week. So till that time, see you then.
See you next week, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon Plus Rewind. Pantheon Plus is not affiliated with Visionary Realms. Be sure to check out our Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube channels under the name Pantheon Plus. You can follow Theric at Pantheon Theric on Twitter, and Desrin at Desrin Does also on Twitter. And you can stay up to date with all things Pantheon at www.pantheon.plus. Until next time, cheers, and thanks for listening.